I'm going to call the July 31st, 2019 meeting of the Lake Commission to order. Welcome to this one, thank you for coming. Start off with the approval of the minutes from last month's meeting. Did everyone get a chance to read them?
Yes.
Any comments?
We accomplished quite a lot last meeting.
We did.
I wanted to give the board some kudos, and the commission did a good job.
All right.
Make a motion to accept.
Oh,
Second?
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstained, great. Okay, so voted. And review of approval, do you have any bills? Expenses?
Do not believe so, no.
No? So, that's a quick one.
Very fiscally responsible.
That's right, no bills. Good and bad news, I guess, right? So we got 5 minutes before the first hearing, so I'm gonna start the commissioners' reports, move things along. And so this week, I'm gonna start with this part of it. This weekend was extremely busy on the lake. And it was a hot weekend, and it was busy all over the place. It was busy at Oak Island, it was busy at the Corzini ramp, it was busy across the Corzini ramp I can't believe I can't remember the name of this place.
The chocolate thing, Judy?
Oh my God, well, the ramp beside,
Brownie Beach.
Brownie Beach, thank you. Brownie Beach, it was busy all over the place. So it was a crazy weekend. I went out at 6:30 at night, thinking everybody, on Sunday night, thinking everybody had kind of, wound down and started heading home, and it was just nuts. So still. It was an interesting ride. I was actually we were coming up to Kings Point where it narrows down, and there was probably 7 or 8 boats out of the way coming through that little narrow point there. And everybody slowed down and was, kind of respecting everyone's space, except for one guy in a pontoon boat who was in between me and land on the Worcester side. He probably had 25 feet between me and land, and he went by about 30 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, which was bad enough. But his passenger, who was in the back of the pontoon boat, gave me the double bird as he walks by. I understand. It was just an interesting dynamic out there with people cutting you off, and it was just kind of crazy. So, law enforcement, these guys are doing the best job they can out there. I think it would be impossible for one boat, even with 2 men on it, to manage that kind of activity. I don't know of a busier place in Shrewsbury on a Sunday than that. So, I think we'll continue to lobby law enforcement to get as much resources as we can and try to get the state back involved again. And any help we can get from Worcester PD would be fantastic. I did speak with, and I don't know, I'm just going to throw this out there, but as a report, it's part of the report, but I did speak to Casey Duvar at Regatta Community Sailing, and he says he's got a couple of boats that just kind of sit around on the weekends. Because one of the other really busy areas of the lake going on now is Oak Island and Flint Pond. And they congregate over there. They don't charge a fee. There's nobody at the boat ramp to check to see if there's registrations on the thing. Shrewsbury PD did go down there this weekend, but they have, they got fires going. They're cooking, and they got the music going. There's probably 9 or 10 jet skis active in the water off of that beach, going around. Which, they kind of buzz around there and get tired of it, and they zip over to the big lake. So, that's opportunities. I don't know how that works with have a certain kind of boat, or if there's any rules with that from the standpoint of manning something like that, or borrowing that, to go over to places that you can't get to. I took a tour also this past Friday with Shrewsbury's town manager, Kevin Missick, and he and I and Mike Liberty drove around the lake and kind of gave him a tour and a perspective. I think it was helpful for him to understand the scope of what we're doing and see that there's, there's basically a third of the lake that we can't patrol from a law enforcement standpoint. And we got a good view. We brought them all the way from one end to the other. We went all the way down to the Irish Dam. We saw where all the, where all the invasive weeds are. And so it was a productive trip, and I think it's going to help us in the long run. Shrewsbury's been incredible as far as helping us fund our efforts here. They've pitched in the last 3 years. They pitched in $20,000. I think it was $20,000 each year for the last 3 years. So not as much as we'd like, but it's better than nothing. So it's we really appreciate that, and we appreciate the manager, advocating for us. So I have some more stuff. We'll continue after the hearing. We want to get these guys going. So we have a public hearing for the Eastern Point condos. They had put a dock system in. We had a meeting a while ago, and it was last year. I think the developer of the newer units had come in and asked for something, and we approved the drawing. And Eastern Point wanted to add a slip to that. They had repositioned the dock at our request, so we can keep it out of the way of the crew course, and they wanted to add one more slip onto it. I think that's what it is. But do you have drawings of what? So,
yeah, we had submitted those to you via email. I don't know if you got them. I have a digital version I can give to you. And you can, this is just
perfect.
kind of a
All right.
situation here.
So, I like it. I'll pass this. You got to give that back, right? We should issue those?
This is beautiful.
Let's put it in the budget. The iPad or the dock?
I like the document.
Focus on the dock,
I like
okay.
both.
And there's a drawing,
Yeah.
if you swipe
That's
it.
what
Yeah.
it looks like in the
This
water.
looks like you can see.
Right, you've seen it. I mean, you've been out there rowing
I've gone by it 48 times since the last meeting.
48 times. You cut it. Is there a
12 times a week, 4 weeks.
You put a notch in the oar or something?
Pretty good.
No.
Yeah. So, what's your perspective, I guess, on it?
Okay, I was going to mention something, I'll mention it now.
Yeah.
The only comment I can add, they removed the one that sticked out furthest, and that helped.
Yeah.
But one thing that a lot of people probably haven't noticed is that there's the famous swimmer who tows the red buoy behind him that is out there every morning when the rowers go by. The one thing the new dock has done is it's made him swim out a little further into the main lane where the rowers are returned along the Shrewsbury side. So the rowers now have all had to really keep their eyes open, because any minor change in the docking structure there seems to change the behavior around it as well. And people really now, who have got used to where the swimmer is, have to watch very carefully that they don't. There's a real problem here, because all the scullers obviously face backwards and the swimmer's facing forward.
Okay, so, I mean, do you feel that that's something that that sooner or later they get acclimated to and would kind of
Yes,
seek its own level?
it's just another thing that has to be worried about.
Pat, you want to take a look at this? Thank you. Don't drop. You can swipe, there's a drawing on it too, the other way.
I'm a bit all concerned about, yeah, it just might be that one, the farthest south one.
Yeah, which is the removed one, correct?
That's the one we do, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the only one I'd be concerned about, everything else is sort of tucked into one.
Right, now that that's removed, there's really nothing protruding when you go.
Right, well, they didn't just remove that slip to achieve that, they actually moved the whole system back significantly. So basically, the original approval that we did was that the system they couldn't exceed 40 feet from the shore. And that's basically where this is sitting right now. So, and I don't know if you guys estimated how far that, the end of this slip will be out more than 40 feet.
Yeah, we're in that footprint, so.
You're within the 40-foot
Yeah.
footprint?
Well, at that end, it's shorter as it
Right.
goes, as it goes along. The other way is where it gets farther, it's shorter there,
It's shorter.
closer to the gazebo, shorter.
It'll be within the
But I think
40-foot
Yeah, it'd be
buffer.
less than
shorter.
40
gazebo
feet.
40 feet from land.
It'd be less than 40 feet from land, yeah.
It'll be less than 40 feet from there.
Be less than 40 feet. So we're in the parameter that we had.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one more question?
You bet.
A lot of the docks around the lake have, once they have boats on them, the boats protrude quite a bit beyond the dock. How far do you think your boats are gonna protrude beyond the dock?
It's a good question. The slip themselves are 30 feet, so that'll handle wholly any boat that we put on it, because our condo actually limits the size of boats. So you're not gonna put anything over 24 feet on the slip, so they can be wholly within that 40-foot buffer.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
For everybody's edification, Mr. Diggins was commenting about the one finger closest to the clubhouse, and that, from that perspective, looks like it comes out maybe just a wee bit much. Predicated on, how it works with rowing over time. If that's an issue, we may then have to revisit that one finger sticking out from the main walkway closest to your clubhouse. And that's the only criticism I'm hearing at the moment, okay, so.
Well, that's what yeah, that's because they're asking for that.
If anybody's been boating on the lake, cruised by it, you would know what I'm talking about.
Right. This would affect, not the rowing lane, actually, this is going to affect the travel lane, correct?
Yeah, it's, the biggest thing that it would affect is Sculler's coming back, as you mentioned.
The skull is coming back in
But
the open lane for the.
Yeah, and just remember, part of our permit requirement requires us to leave an open lane
Yes.
outside of the course, so it may affect that.
Right. But when we, because you gave input when we approved the original system, and that was within the 40, that's kind of what we
I
agreed,
believe
right?
so, yes.
Within the 40-foot buffer,
Yep.
we should be okay.
Yeah, and I share the concern that if there's a boat coming too far off that last one, that might be an issue. But we have issues with other docks, and the boat owners are great about moving them,
Okay.
during the season, so.
Is that a, excuse me, is that something you guys would be willing to do?
Yeah,
If during a tournament, someone comes up and says, I can't access, it's in the way.
right, so there are a couple things. One, that lane that was brought to our attention during our walkthrough about a month ago. And certainly we can understand that we are on the edge, especially when that finger was going out at an angle. We've tucked it in 10 feet and now we're straightening that out completely, and it's actually closer inward as well. So it's gonna be moved in 5 feet or so. So we brought it in 10 feet and to the right 5 feet. But certainly if there's a request, where the end slip needs to move to another spot, we have unit owners that occupy slips that they don't have boats. It's just a value of their property.
Okay.
I'm sure we can move something for a weekend or a couple weeks. That wouldn't be an issue.
Yes.
From studying it one last time, the particular finger that I was talking about closest to the clubhouse, off the main gangplank, it seems, just for everybody's knowledge, there's a main walkway, and then there's a ramp that goes down to a floating finger. That finger closest to the clubhouse, if that gangplank could be shortened up half the length, it might solve a lot of the problems. That is, there's a sloping gangplank down to the floating dock. It looks like it's the same length as the other ones. It looks like if that could be
You said
shortened
this-
a little,
we-
it could make life a lot easier.
I think Peter can comment on that.
I understand the perspective, you're talking about this piece right here?
This piece right there, that piece right there. See how there's a
Right.
ramp that goes off the main walkway that goes down to the floating section. If that
Right.
was shortened a little, could maybe solve a lot of problems.
Okay, if, from this perspective, I see what you're saying, because it looks like this sticks out farther than that, but it actually doesn't, it's the other way around.
Okay.
This end of this corner right here is farther west than this. It's just the perspective of the camera angle there. This is all one straight piece. This was out here.
Yeah, I
Where
know.
the,
Yeah, I know.
so they
I think
brought
they
it
did a
up.
beautiful job.
Thank you.
All right. Any, oh, sorry.
So what we're discussing is the area that's circled in green.
Yes, they're gonna put an additional slip the same
Correct.
size as that's what they're
So-
asking.
Would it be possible to put it down north, the north end of this?
We don't have the shoreline.
Hmm?
We don't have the shoreline.
You mean there's no, you mean you run out of, how much to the property line is there? How many feet?
We would not have enough shoreline to, we talked to Ron about that option, and he said we wouldn't have enough shoreline to add another finger at that end.
Because you'd have to extend that dock 20 feet.
Yeah, never mind the
The main
cost,
run,
quite
20 feet
frankly.
north.
It's another, that would cost another $10,000.
That's a 30-year-old,
So-
that's a 30-year-old dock system.
Right. So-
That really not gonna accommodate this piece.
No, I'm saying on this dock
Sorry
that you
about
have
that.
here.
Oh, towards Ron's
the new
house.
dock,
Oh,
new dock.
towards-
Sorry.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
when you're at that end, it's.
Oh, yeah, we're right at the end,
it's-
yeah.
It's too close.
I think that just my opinion is what we approved originally, I think suffices, and I think it is, they moved it out of the way, and I think we should just go with what was approved originally, instead of, and don't add that additional finger.
Mr. Chair, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Just for confirmation. From on the water, it looks if you add that fifth extension out, it'll project a little further than the four existing. Is that a correct observation?
It's actually closer to the shore than the last finger on the end.
Okay.
And just so that we're clear on what our intentions are as a community, we are a large community of property owners, and the community, these owners want to have access to the lake. So this is something where, through this process, we're now adding the additional fingers to allow, Shrewsbury property owners access to the lake. We've worked with the committee, and we appreciate the committee's advice and guidance through this process. But we feel our request is reasonable, and that addition of that last finger, we don't have any other dock expansion plans, and that would complete our dock expansion and allow the people that have requested access to the lake, access to the lake.
Okay, and I understand your point. I moved on to Lake Quinsigamond in a condo.
Mhm.
And, we went through it was a heck of a time getting a permit through the commission at that point for a dock. And the consensus at that point was, and this is a consensus of many of the single home abutters, was that when you're building the condos, basically it was jamming a whole bunch of, it's 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag as far as the shoreline, because you took up all the shoreline. You have a single family house, and you got one structure out in the middle of it, you got one boat, all of a sudden, if you took that and said, okay, that property could equal 5 houses. 5 houses wide in a typical Lake Quinsigamond lot, okay? Then you'd have 5 docks, and not, how many are in there now?
That is 10, 20 docks
20.
total on
20
both
docks
sides.
total.
Yeah.
So
Between the two.
20 docks, 40 slips. Yes.
No, 20 boats.
20 slips.
20 boats.
20 boats.
20 boats, plus the jet skis,
Yep.
right. So I
Get
think it's-
over 4 times as much.
yeah, so it's a condensed
For sure.
development, we'll say. And I don't have a problem with this, again, so much, but that's kind of a concern with everybody.
Yeah, we're only at 50% of how many units there are compared to boats, so.
Right,
Yeah.
well, that's because you ran out of shoreline.
Yep.
Yes.
If I can add, Mr. Chair, relative to the vagaries of these Lake Quinsigamond, and also relative to established pre-existing use, although it's a great part of the Commonwealth, by the crew people who've been rowing the lake since the 1850s, I think we've got to take all of this into regard. And I just, at this point in time, I would support Mr. Polito's position of see how this works as is. I would not be in favor of approving yet another finger as is so circled on your iPad over here at this time. And that's just my feeling, relative to, again, trying to have some fair and equitable use of the lake for what we have to deal with. It's not a rubber band, the lake can't expand. From my observation of boating on the lake this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we gotta be conscientious of keeping the water as open as possible. There was so much boating, it was not fun.
So it sounds
Mr.
like.
Chair, can I add a comment to his?
Sure.
As far as the rowing goes in the lake, it is different during the 8 weeks in April and May when the lanes are in place. And so one reasonable thing, since that's when it's really tight, it might be worthwhile to stick with your suggestion of just leaving the 4 till next spring we go through another 8 weeks when the lanes are in place, everybody's pushed against that shore, and we see how well it works out. And then readdress the question of the 5th dock.
Any other
I
comments,
quick
questions?
question.
Sure.
Because I did not physically go down there myself,
Yeah.
but from listening to what's been said, the finger of the dock that's not displayed
The
here,
proposed.
the proposed one, is actually going to be more east than the other docks. So I don't see how that really affects the traffic on the lake. If anything affected the lake, I would think we'd be questioning this last dock rather than this first one. So I wouldn't rule out they couldn't have this extra dock. I think it probably behooves us to watch how it works with what we got already. But it almost sounds like that one, the one that's not on here, would not affect the travel lanes up and down the lake. But I don't know, I wasn't there, you went down, you went also, Penny? So you would have a better idea if that finger would affect the traffic on the lake.
Yeah, I mean, I was down after they built.
So I wasn't there, so I can't say for sure.
So from my perspective, where they're gonna put this finger isn't really gonna conflict with the lanes. So I don't, besides, and I understand the point of adding volume to the lake in terms of use. But, I'm gonna argue that most of the people who live on the lake on Sunday probably were not in their boats riding around because it was just nuts city out there. So I thought 6:30 in the evening would be a safe time to go out there. And, I wasn't, it wasn't. So I noticed a lot of boats that were parked at the dock. So, I don't think, adding the volume is a main concern of mine, but I do take that, I understand the comment.
So you're thinking more of adding volume than interfering with?
Well, from my perspective, it doesn't really interfere anymore with the course
Navigation.
from what I can tell. It's always hard to tell because the course isn't out right now, so I don't know. If it next year, comes up, and here's my fear, that I think that it may be prudent to consider, waiting to see where the course is gonna end up. Here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to say, okay, you guys can put this in here, but next year you may have to take it out. And I'm just thinking you probably don't want you don't want to do that. Is that?
So just so that we're on the same page, we feel very comfortable that this will not impede with that lane that is required by crew. We also understand that the crew is a big part of not only Central Mass, but the United States. It's one of the premier rowing lakes in the world. So we, to interrupt that is not our intention. We're also residents, in terms of adding volume to the lake. We feel like we're residents of the lake. We should, and I think volume can be controlled in a lot of different ways, but limiting resident access to the lake, we would look at different alternatives, or we'd encourage the committee to look at different alternatives. From an approval standpoint, I think the best way to view whether or not something will or will not work is if it's actually in the water, as opposed to speculating where it may or may not be. So one of the things that we, as we said earlier during the conversation, we would be willing, if there is an issue, a weekend or something, that slip can be pulled out with a pin and we can move it. So if it's a situation where we put the lanes in, we say, this is in the way, we can very easily move that. Or it might be something where for the first, I know that usually it's before boating season is where the most of the rowing happens, you know, keeping that slip out during that first month and then putting it in after the second month.
Those come out during the winter, so we don't have to put it in. In fact, in our place, most people don't put the boats in until June to July anyways.
Right. And
So
there's
we don't
enough-
have to put that finger in
Right.
till
That system's
later.
coming out in the winter, yes.
They
Right.
come out, yeah, they're
It's
not
coming
gonna,
Right.
so, yeah,
Not
our
against the
place,
rule, I'm just
Yeah.
suggesting.
Yeah, it's gonna be coming out and putting in and,
yeah.
Okay,
So if anybody were to say get it out, we'll just take it out.
so if this were subject to review in the spring when that thing's out there, if this were an approval with a covenant on it, that if that thing's in the way, it's, you gotta move it.
During the cruise season, and that,
During
yeah,
the cruise
that,
season.
that's,
Well, no,
yeah, well, we have
yeah,
dock
well,
space.
period. I mean, if it comes into, you know, that's in the way of the swimmer thing, I don't know how to respond to that, because
No, my only point about the
I know
swimmer
that's a
was,
big red ball he's got tied to.
you have to be careful when you make one change that it affects many other things. It's
Right.
just not that one change.
Right.
And it's surprising how the dock literally changed where the swimmer usually was. I actually had to go around it one morning.
Right. Was he more than 50 feet from the shore?
I don't think so.
Okay, so the pleasure of the board is to vote straight out, yes or no on this, or do you want to amend it and say, we're
Just
going to review it?
one question, are you saying yes or no with that covenant you just put in, or without that?
That's what I'm asking. You can, we can vote yes or no, you can have this, you can't have it, and period, or we can say, we can amend it to, with the approval of the proponents, that we can either put it in and save it for review, and if it's in the way, we gotta move it. They gotta move it. Or we can say, I guess we can not approve it, but without prejudice, and say, you can come back next year after the season and find out if it's going to work.
Well, Mr.
And
Chairman,
I agree, I don't know how you're gonna determine it, if it's in the way or not, if it's not in.
Yeah.
But,
Pete,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would think if we're leaning towards approving, I think we gotta take into account what Mr. Polito said, and at the minimum, it's gonna have to be something, we have to see how it works, and have the ability to have that easily taken out of the plan without making a real big issue. This is simply, we can take a look at with it there to see if it has an effect. I said, Mr. Polito was there, you were there, he was there, so you have the best idea of how that's gonna go. I'd be willing to approve, but I really am concerned about what Mr. Polito's concerned about. So I would like to have that, if we're going to approve it, to have the ability to take it out of the plan if we have to. A covenant, however you want to word it.
okay, so, do I have a motion to that effect? What do you-
I'm concerned I won't word the motion correctly.
No, that's
Because
fine. I mean, the only thing is, if it doesn't work and it becomes an issue, we, this year, this fall, it's in.
Right. The course is, Patrick, is the course in the fall?
No.
No.
Oh, that's right, too.
Or
It's the other side of this.
It's a single-
So next spring, if it's if it's an issue,
Yeah,
they have to take it out, and then does it go back in? How does it work? Do they take it in and out? Who determines that? So, in other words,
We do.
I understand that, so
Yeah, yeah.
now, here it is, okay, crew day, race day, the boat's there, and okay, here's Mr. Diggins trying to get
yeah,
the thing moved,
You're right, I don't want any, like,
and it's gonna be an issue.
right, I don't want any, like, loose ends going on.
Mr. Chairman, just so that we're clear on when it's in, our race schedule usually starts, and it's all ice dependent, so
Yeah.
as soon as the water warms up enough, people can actually put the buoys in. So we look to put it in the beginning of April, and we always have it out on Saturday of Memorial Day weekend
Right.
at night. So
Which
it's
is
only
certainly
in for,
voting
it's only in for a short, not a short, but it's
The
only in
course.
for a period
Yeah,
of time.
yeah. All right,
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
that frankly, we approve the docks as they are currently, but in our June 2020 meeting, predicated on the experience of rowing in the lanes this next spring, give serious consideration at that time or during the summer season, allowing for Eastern Shore condo, then to put in that finger with the understanding that as long as it doesn't appear to have some adverse effect in terms of voting on the lake, they understand we reserve the right to then ask it to be removed. But at that June meeting, give serious consideration, allow for them then at that point to put it in for the season thereafter. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If someone can amend that if they want, or vote it up, vote it down.
I just, just to be accurate, we don't have to approve the dock as it exists, because we already did that. So-
Okay.
So that's done. This would actually be, are you approving the slip?
I'm saying wait till the June 2020 commission meeting
Right.
to then see what the experience has been in terms of the lanes and the rowing next spring on the lake, and predicated on that, give serious consideration at the June meeting for Eastern Shore to come in front of us again to request putting that extra slip in then for next summer season.
Okay, so my question would be, how do we know if it's in the way, if it's not in?
We'll find out next summer.
What? But
It won't be in.
the course will be, so,
Well, but the point is, we want to see what they got now as to whether it's of an issue or not. And we'll experientially get feedback, we'll see with the lanes in, how rowing and the crews returning from Regatta Point back to the Donahue Rowing Center, how it works in terms of what their current configuration is.
The current configuration's already approved.
Okay.
Current one's approved, because we went down, we had a hearing last year. It conforms basically to what was approved. The only thing that we're discussing now is the extra finger. And my concern is, where it is, it's going to protrude. My suggestion was to move it down to the north end of the dock. They say it cannot be done. So if it could be done, that would solve a lot of issues. So where it's going to go now, where that green circle is, I think it's going to be an issue. And the issue is going to be, when they have it in, and they have their course set up, who's gonna be the person to go there and take them? Are they gonna call you at home? It's gonna be an issue. Who's gonna tell them to take it out? I don't know. Who's gonna watch that? It's just another thing that you have to watch. You can't.
right, no, I'm
It's not gonna happen. It's gonna be an issue.
because this docks that move, they get moved on the Worcester side, yes? Patrick?
I'm sorry?
There's, you mentioned that there's other docks that also conflict a little bit.
Yes.
And there's one I'm,
Right
on the
on the-
Worcester side that does get moved, right?
Yes.
And that, who moves it?
He's a police officer.
But, so the.
He just usually, all he does
The
is,
the owner-
when it's
the owner of
normally
the
and
property.
it sticks out, and then he
The
turns it
dock
on.
owner, the dock owner moves
Yeah.
it. And when you want that moved, is that done automatically, or do you
Yeah, he
have to-
just knows when we're going, and he just,
just takes it out?
yeah.
Yeah. And that's race to race, or does he take it out and leave it?
No,
out?
when the course goes in, he just, he knows it, and he just
He
leaves it.
just moves it. All right. So there's no, you don't have to contact, you don't have to make a phone call, you don't have to chase.
Well, if we
anyone
do,
down.
it's not a problem, because I'm more than willing to work with us. If we weren't, it'd be a problem, but no,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
very amicable.
Would that be a problem with you guys?
It's two bolts that you loosen to take that finger off, and they can put it right up on the dock, yeah.
The floating dock.
It's a floating dock, yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
What?
that would make both sides happy. Let them put it in. If they agree for next rowing season with the day the course goes in, they'll take it out, and we'll use that 8-week period as an evaluation.
They'll give a tentative approval.
All right, so that would allow them to put the dock in this season, the rest of the season.
So we can
Yeah,
see.
you can see
So
it.
we can see.
And then next season, essentially you want to be putting it in.
Make it permanent or
Because
not.
the course will be out probably before you put your docks in.
We'll give
Yeah,
them
I
a
mean-
I know,
we'll put it
Ronnie
in.
will work in the ice, so.
Yeah.
We, normally, we have our boats coming in sometime around Memorial Day, but if we know that
Okay,
that finger
so
would
you're-
step
You
out.
wouldn't even be in the water.
I'm the only
Right.
crazy one that puts his boat in there.
Right.
Nobody else does.
And we have, and here's,
I'm at the other end.
we can go ahead and just talk to the unit owners. There are many open slips on the old the docks are 30 years old. If there's a boat owner, if they, on that slip, they can move to one of the slips on the other side. We can work it out internally, and we ultimately just work with the crew team.
So-
We've also, you know, we've had the same dock provider for 15 years. So he's somebody that we can have a consistent point of contact and set the parameters with them.
All right. It's not hard to do that, you just
It's not.
unhinge it, pull the
Right.
anchor. Famous last words. All right, so now we're talking, is there a motion?
There's a motion right now, right?
Well, but this would change that. The motion would be more like
Can I
you
make a
approve it,
suggestion?
but it has to come out during the race.
Yes.
Is that,
Give them permission to put the dock in with the agreement that they will take it out when the course goes in next year.
that's slip?
We will then make a decision whether they can leave it in permanently or they have, next
Okay.
year, or they'll have to take it out every year.
All right, is that a?
We're talking about that one finger now.
Well,
Yeah.
one finger,
Yeah.
the rest has already been approved.
Mr. Chairman, and just to Mr. Polito's point, just adding some parameters to that, can we at some point get in communication, maybe have a structured meeting where you come down and take a look and we can determine, okay, terrific,
Yes.
so we're okay with that.
Yes. I mean, I don't see how we could do it otherwise.
Just so that we can add a little substance.
We need to have a public
I'll second that motion.
hearing.
Yeah.
So that motion second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay.
Good luck and see how it works.
Thank you. Is it okay if I take my iPad back?
They might want it.
Ask Roger. He may have to further review this. All right, thank you. All right.
Back to commissioners report, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, we'll come back to that.
No, I think I
Right.
actually have. Yeah, so we're.
Mr. Piker.
A few items, if people were watching WBZ Channel 4 television this weekend, they saw, or they maybe didn't, in the article about the water spout this past weekend at the bottom of South Bay near Route 20. It actually ripped the pontoon boat off the dock. It ripped the ropes. It almost, from my view of yet, albeit a cell phone video, almost flipped the pontoon boat over. All I can say is, don't take these things lightly. There was no storms around. It was a clear weather water spout. If you see it, stay away from it. It's very strange as the force effect of it. If again, you want to check it out, look under CBS local news and type in Lake Quinsigamond water spout. You see it this past weekend. Moving along, the eaglets are flying about. They're out of the nest, they're flying around. The lake was like a three-ring circus this Saturday, particularly Sunday. Some kids were driving boats and in front of their parents on jet skis. It was hairy. As opposed to that, the boating etiquette and activity was excellent during the gathered armada of a few hundred boats at night with the July 4th fireworks that the city of Worcester put on, and that was great to see, as opposed to boating this past weekend during the daytime. Let me just say that. And those little Asian clams that we had somebody here talking about, they seem to be getting all about the lake. I mean, I'm seeing them here, I'm seeing them there, the little tiny clams. We had a whole discussion on it at a previous commission meeting, but they're getting prolific. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for now.
All right, thank you. All good stuff. The water spout is something to see, so you should check it out. Also, I was talking with someone this morning that said that they saw one, that was a few years ago, over in the cove, I don't know what they call it, it's in Edgemere. It's the cove that wraps around Cana Drive and Bayview, and it was in there. And it was basically the same thing. Didn't grab a boat or anything, but it just kind of whirled around and then disappeared. So,
Just to comment on that, when my kids were younger, we were just walking through a field, not near the water, and there was one of these wind spinning daisies came, and we were shocked. It lifted a bale of hay up and it disappeared in the sky. If one of the little kids had been there, who
Yeah.
knows, they would have gone where the bale of hay went.
Living in Oz.
And that was right here in Grafton, so,
Yeah.
you don't have to go out west to see these things.
Yeah, well, we've had experience with tornadoes, truly, so, yeah, it was bizarre. So, that's it?
Officer Romano with the Shrewsbury Police Department. We have nothing to report at this time.
All right, thank you. Captain Steele?
This weekend was part of an official heat wave for Massachusetts. And when we heat wave, obviously, the lake is very busy, but we also have heat on the street in the city when it's hot out. And it takes most of the manpower that we have just to maintain what we need to do on the streets. We recognize that there's busy lake time. I don't know offhand how much of the time we were on the water this weekend, but I do know that we were busy in the city part of the land mass of Worcester. We were pretty busy. I did want to also mention, when you were talking about the areas that we have a difficult time putting patrol boats in, that my guys have been exploring jet skis. We also have a couple other bodies of water in Worcester. We have Indian Lake and Coast Pond, and we were looking for a craft that we can put on those bodies of water, especially Indian Lake, because there's jet skis already on Indian Lake, and we need to do some enforcement there. The environmental police have been helping us, because they'll put a craft in the water. And then we have Coast Pond, which no motorized vehicles are allowed, but I think we can put a police vehicle on the water if we need to. So that was, I'm not sure how much jet skis can get into the areas that you were talking about.
Oh, that'd be good.
But I think we were looking at a pair of jet skis for the police. So,
That would work well.
that may or may not have come to fruition, and it may take as much time or more time than it took us to get back on the lake once we were off, but we are looking at it. So that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. Okay.
Shrewsbury Conservation Commission issued some enforcement orders for work being done without porous conditions on the lake. Just note, anybody doing work on or near the shore within 100 feet need to get an order of conditions from the Shrewsbury Conservation Commission on the Shrewsbury side as well. If you're in Worcester, you would do the same thing from Worcester. So just, come in and see us and get your permit, and you can do the necessary work you need to do.
What's that process, what's that entail? Like this stuff is already built, and you go back over and say,
Where the enforcement orders are?
yeah,
I think they just started doing some work with.
okay, so it wasn't, it's already a structure there, like we didn't see it then, okay. If that was to happen, if someone built a structure and didn't say anything, same thing, it gets reported to Concom and.
Correct, and then you'd have to come in and go through a process with probably surveyors and engineers and plans and different things.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, I know that when Sean and I were driving around the boat looking for tags, he pointed out a couple of different structures that were just, and these weren't just dock stuff, there was like, one thing was like this beautiful, it was a nice job they did. I think it was probably 30 or 40 feet wide, you know what I'm talking about? It kind of juts out over a wall. Like it's attached to a wall, it's got angles, you probably drove by, because it's not too far from me, on the Shrewsbury side.
That has a permit.
That's a permit, okay. Because they didn't come and do it for the
They
lake.
came and they have a permit from the Conservation Commission.
Okay, so that one's all set, okay, good. All right, is that it?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Brandon,
I have no report.
thank you.
Oh, I just want to add a couple of safety issues.
Bill, you really talked a lot tonight.
The row, I know.
Right.
The rowers on the lake have encountered more than one speedboat without spotters. There's the driver going as fast as he can, looking ahead, and there's a skier behind swinging back and forth, and there is no spotter, which is required, watching the skier for safety, as well as making sure that they don't run over a canoe, a kayak, or a paddleboard, or a sculler.
Mhm.
And I know at least two of the cases where they promised to report them to the Shrewsbury Police. I don't know if you've got those reports.
I'm not aware of it, maybe I'll send it here.
Okay, well, I'll remind the club again that they're supposed to have all the rowers report them, rather than just complain about them. Also, I talked with a number of the coaches, and they're very much in favor, it was discussed 2 months ago, about somehow creating this dictionary that identifies all of the rocks and dangerous points in the lake in the common language that lake owners and users know about, identify each one with the nearest landline, and then somehow getting that dictionary to the 911 operators, so when someone makes a call and says there's an overturned boat at such and such a rock, and the 911 operator has to respond with, well, I can only identify a landline. You have to tell me what landline is near that rock.
That's a great idea.
And that would be helpful for you guys, right? Yeah, all right. That's awesome. Thank you for following through on that. On your first, are you all set? You all set?
Yes, that's it.
On your first comment, I did get 2 registration numbers, and in one case a name for the registration number, because the repeat offender, so,
Okay.
and I thought that went to Shrewsbury PD, but maybe it didn't, so I'll follow up, make sure that person
Okay.
does that. And you did comment on the thing,
Right.
which, thank you for that you did exactly what you're supposed to do.
I'll follow up as well.
Yeah, just so we know that gets, it's not just, a lot of people, like, they post it on Facebook, they do that, and it's like, that's great, except it doesn't go anywhere, and, I know you guys monitor Facebook, you're not looking for, boat registration numbers more than someone threatening somebody. Yeah, so, that's the thing to do, and the other comment I'd make on those 2 particular cases is that any kind of, camera image would be good.
Yes, that has been mentioned before, and it certainly is obviously true.
Right, and this also brings up a thing, I just want to do a quick aside, that maybe one of the things we should look at with the rules, because we have Rule 30, and Rule 30 basically is that, we have a hearing, and that's if someone does something outrageous and is dangerous, and, there's, I think it's Rule 29, Rule 30, that we can ban a boat for 12 months, or ban a boat and a particular individual on the lake, if they pose a danger, say they swap a crew boat, or, on purpose, or they just do something just nuts, but, maybe as part of that, we should put in a definition that if you get stopped 3 times, I think it's that, is that what it's a speeding ticket? 3 speeding tickets, and
3 surchargeable events
you lose your license?
suspended.
Yeah, suspend your license. So, maybe we look at that when we do a rule change and say that, hey, your name comes up, or you get bagged 3 times doing the same thing, or similar stuff, skiing without a spotter, And I know it goes on there almost every morning, it happens every morning. So, maybe they don't have a spotter every morning, but they certainly are out there skiing every morning, and there's a lot of times when they don't have a spotter. And the only way to cite them is if they happen, these guys happen to be on the water when that happens, so that means that someone would have to be in there, because you're skiing at what, 6?
5:30 to 8:30,
5:30 to
usually with the
8:30.
bulk of people
That's
on
the
the
hours.
lake. It gets too windy after that, and too crowded.
Right, okay, so, time to get up. Really? So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if if that would make sense.
So you'd be basically saying you'd suspend the privilege of using
Yeah,
the,
we already have a rule 29, Rule 31. I
so
think
you
which
want to
one is which.
define that,
Yeah,
the conditions.
yeah.
That sounds
And we just said that's one of the things that would prompt that.
I've never seen that happen. I'd be interested to see that happen.
What?
Bring someone before the commission and say you violated this rule 3 times and we're gonna suspend you for 12 months off the lake.
That's a hearing. We don't just-
That's how you do it.
We don't really like white wigs and stuff and, make a decision.
Generally, that's, but I mean, I think that would be an interesting thing to do. You could also explore, you may have the power as a commission to summons someone before your commission that commits violations of the lake, even if they're not cited by the police. Certainly, cite convictions by the police, citations would be demonstratable evidence. But you, as a commission, if it's just unsafe behavior, you can have your own hearing if you have an unsafe operator in that pond and you've got people who will testify to it or video evidence, even if the police haven't made a complaint.
All right.
But you know better than I do, and we don't know what could happen, but Mr. Diggins could probably tell you, there's probably been people over the years that needed to be suspended.
The vast majority of the things on the lake, I think, are communication and education and understanding. But you're mentioning the folks that are out there between 5:30 and 6:30, and they're the same people. They're not coming in off the ramp.
That's not a communication problem.
No, but I think maybe it is as to a,
Certainly, if you
knock
had
it
a
off.
hearing or told me to bring him in for
Oh,
that.
yeah, tell
let
me
me-
that.
Even say that that's also been communicated to them,
Well,
so,
Your next
again, I
step
can
is to say,
understand
yeah.
an educational, people don't understand.
yeah,
But-
I don't think this is an example of people not understanding, people definitely understand. They're not supposed to do that.
Mr. Chair, may I read Rule number 29, Rule 30?
You may.
Okay.
You
Rule
can
number
stand up.
29 of the commission, I'm loud enough, I think. The Lake Quinsigamond Commission may ban an operator of any vessel from the waters of Lake Quinsigamond for a period of up to 1 year if the commission finds after public hearing that the person operated a vessel in a manner that was negligent or endangered the public. Rule number 30, the Lake Quinsigamond Commission may order the removal of any vessel from the waters of Lake Quinsigamond for a period of up to 1 year if the commission finds after public hearing that the vessel was operated in a manner that was negligent or endangered the public. Rule number 29.
You have the power to do that without the police.
So,
All right, so, there you go. I guess we do.
Let that be a warning to those unsafe operators out there.
so total, so forewarned.
Right, I'm inclined to, bring him in, if that's what happens.
Get those lassos out.
What's that?
Get
Yeah.
those lassos out.
Go get him, well, yeah, we can't, I don't think we have the power to say, go get him and bring him in here.
Move on to the agenda, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Vote to approve a member of the commission, okay, sorry. So this is a vote to appoint a member of the commission to Open Space Committee. We talked about this last week, and, no one volunteered, so I did. So if,
Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. So I need a motion to approve me. I don't know if.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Peter Collins to be the commission representative for the Open Space Committee.
Second.
As vice chair, should I
Yes,
conduct the
you
vote? All sit in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hey, there you go.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor.
Is that a paid position?
Open space. I thought it was like, come and, go to space, but no. All right,
We've got the discussion to include Newton Pond and the lake.
I'm sorry, I skipped one. I know, I knew that was in here. Okay, so
It's the Shrewsbury.
I want to talk about, we got a ping, and actually the watershed did, from a group of abutters at Newton Pond, and that they were concerned that they have, a weed problem, and they want to deal with the weeds, and they talked to the town manager and some folks in the town, and they talked to Hannah Kane, our representative, and basically it came to the point that they kind of directed them to the watershed and so that's how they kind of came in front of me. So basically what's going on at Newton Pond is Newton Pond's got a healthy crop of Eurasian milfoil, and I think there's some fanwort in there as well. And it's, Newton Pond is less than a mile flow-wise, maybe a mile flow-wise, from the lake. And I'm saying there's a dam on, the south side of it that flows into the, what they call Indian Head Pond or Round Pond or whatever the heck it is, that comes in, and that's right on the other side of the culvert on West Main Street or Lincoln Street. So it goes directly into the pond. We have a collaborative effort with Worcester Lakes and Ponds and the watershed that we're going on to. We're doing source testing. We're kind of expanding that effort and moving forward. So finding the sources of these kind of things is an important aspect of our management plan. And this is a blatant source of weeds. So we could kill every weed in Lake Quinsigamond, but they're going to be coming over that dam and into the lake. And they're going to infest with the one in between us, and we're going to get into our stuff as well. I did not see, and I'm not saying it's not in there, but I did not see any water chestnut. I didn't see any Asian clam on the shore that I was at, but I didn't really explore the shore that much. The issue with Newton, with doing something like, technically speaking, Newton Pond is within our purview because it's part of this Lake Quinsigamond watershed. So that's defined in our charter that, we're responsible to kind of keep an eye on that part of it. This is, obviously, again, a direct flow in there. But, in order to treat anything in Newton Pond and to include that, so I guess what I'm bringing up for discussion is, do we basically incorporate Newton Pond into our lake management plan, our plan, which means we're going to take over the responsibility of treating the weeds in there like we are in the lake in general, and that including the drawdown. So it would be a chemical and the drawdown thing. So what basically it would be, and you guys will probably know this better than me, an amendment to the permits. Do we do that? Or do we have to go from the ground? Okay. So that would occur if we did that. But
Yeah, I don't know why we want to expand what we're doing. We haven't had enough time doing what we need to do just within Lake and Flint. I understand what you're saying, that, there's a dam that goes into does flow into the lake, but there are a lot of other things that flow into the lake too. I just think we have enough to do just within Lake Quinsigamond and Pond. And we can hardly manage that aspect. I know we have a plan, we spend a lot of money on it, we're trying to treat the weeds the best we can, we run into roadblocks, certain things. But I think that's just another thing put on our plate that we will not be able to attend to,
okay.
in my opinion.
Just one question. To what extent does the lake management plan already include looking at external sources that flow into Lake Quinsigamond? I know some of the brooks are included.
Yeah, so basically the outfalls, any source coming into the lake.
So in that sense, we're already, in somewhat sense, watching what's flowing in
Right.
from that dam.
Yeah, this isn't a watching thing, this is a treatment thing.
Right.
In other words, my concern with what's going on over there is that anything that's in that pond is gonna end up in Quinsigamond. So this isn't really, I'm not trying, I'm the last person that wants to add stuff on the plate with the commission, because it's gonna mean raising funds, it's gonna mean going to, which will probably be me doing it, going to both the selectmen in Boylston, because part of this pond's in Boylston, although Shrewsbury owns the land under all of it. But, so we'd have to go to Concom and Boylston to get any permits to approve anything that we do in here. So it's not, it's not nothing to do that. But that said, if we don't do it, I mean, it's basically a source, a known source right next to us that's dumping weed fragments into the lake.
Question,
Yes.
does it have its own lake association?
They have a
No.
group of abutters, so no, not a formal one.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just out of curiosity, I would be curious if we could ask Jackie, if they explore anything that not from Worcester that goes into Lake Quinsigamond, I would think that part of the management of all the water that they've been doing, that they actually look at external sources for some of this stuff. See if they've even looked at that lake, or if that is something that we ordinarily do.
Jacqueline, have you guys been on, well, I guess you guys, have you been on,
I
you and
have
your
not,
crew? You?
I have not been
Newton Pond?
on Newton Pond. I did speak with one gentleman from one of the abutters, I'm not sure who it was. Oh, hello. Good to meet you in person. But I haven't, at that time, I don't think it was known what invasive plants were even there yet.
Right. I mean, I think it'd be a first step, is to maybe have someone,
Well, what I was curious about was
At least
if that's
identify.
something she would look at, because that's not Worcester. If she would, I don't know if that's ordinarily something that would be under your purview or not.
Right, so we do source tracking for other things from other towns, such as in the case of Indian Lake, we look at what's coming in from Holding as far as bacteria and phosphorus, as far as
Billings
what we.
Brook, that's in Shrewsbury that you look in.
Exactly,
Yeah.
so at this point, as my work with Lake Quinsigamond is concerned, it has kind of been limited to the nutrient and bacteria management, since the commission seems to have taken on that whole management plan for the invasive aquatic plants. I am more than happy to.
And I didn't mean to even suggest that you do that, I just wanted to know if it was
Okay.
something that was already being done or not, I didn't know.
Right, no, I have not. The furthest north that I go for my sampling, and of course when I'm out there, I'm looking at all things as far as nutrients, oxygen, and also if I do see invasive aquatic plants around, the furthest north that I go is the sample point in Poor Farm Brook, which is still in Worcester, and then the culvert at Lincoln Street, Main Street, I sample there as well.
I lean towards
Yeah.
watching our own big lake right now, but I just, like I said, I was curious whether or not you were doing something with that lake.
I think that I agree with, trying to expand our purview, money, whatever, but I think mapping it would be an important thing to start, as you mentioned, Peter, and also, it's a shallow pond, so drawdown might be all they need, and that would be the first thing, and that wouldn't be, it would be going to the Concom, but it might be something that might be enough.
Okay.
They've only had a problem the last, 4 years, they said.
Yeah, it's deeper than
It's
shallow
only 10
though.
feet.
It's
About 13 to 15 feet deep.
Yeah, so the
Pretty-
drawdown's it's gonna be a donut, just like Flint Pond, because Flint Pond's basically the same depth.
That's what the weeds are.
I've lived on the pond for 20 years. It has been a problem for much longer than,
Excuse me, when you speak from the audience, please stand up and say who you are and your address for the record.
my name is Lori Dawson. I live at 42 Sewell Drive in Shrewsbury. I have lived on the pond for 20 years. There has always, since I have moved in, been Eurasian milfoil and increasingly water lily, burdock, and other invasive weeds. It has gotten significantly worse since the building of the new dam. I believe that the town owes the residents of that abut Newton Pond, we are residents of Shrewsbury. This dam coincides with a significant increase in weeds. We deserve to have a nice, clean water supply, just as the people who abut Lake Quinsig, especially given that our water does flow into Lake Quinsigamond, And the problem seems to have been significantly affected by the actions of the town.
Okay,
The dam is, I believe, is controlled by the Conservation Commission.
excuse me, Cons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah,
So, I mean, that's a Shrewsbury issue, and I know this board is a commission set up by the state.
that was the,
So it's not a town board, it's a state board, and specifically to deal with the shores of Lake Quinsigamond. So if that's an issue with controlling weeds, you need, I would say, go to the Conservation Commission and ask.
they did do that, but I'm going to,
I don't, when did they come, last meeting? I wasn't at the last meeting.
I'm sorry, they have not gone to Concom. They went to the town to find out what they gotta do. I think that was one of the things on the list. And they end up here because, you know, it's part of the, is Newton Pond part of the Quinsigamond watershed? Lake Quinsigamond watershed? Yes? Yeah, so it's already in our purview. This isn't even an expansion, it's in there, and it's got milfoil, and, you know, we gotta, I don't see how we can not look at that, and not pay attention to it, because at best, it's gonna end up at the lake, and it's not gonna get any better in Newton Pond. I don't believe that the dam or the town itself, is necessarily responsible, just from my, you know, small knowledge of how the weeds are growing in Lake Quinsigamond. I think the dam, if nothing else, would probably, if you did not have that dam there, this probably would not be a problem, because there wouldn't be any water in it. So,
The dam, excuse me, may I speak?
no, just hold on one second. So, this isn't, I don't wanna get to a public hearing right now, I mean, that's something that can happen at some particular time. So, and I wanted to get this on the agenda because I wanna, you know, pass in front of us so we can kind of chew on it. It's a big responsibility. You know, to treat Lake Quinsigamond is over $100,000 a year. It involves, you know, going to multiple meetings and doing multiple things and getting permits and, you know, we're limited to the areas that we can treat. And we had this discussion when we were together on the pond and did the tour that, you know, there's a possibility that the state, at least one agency, can come back and say, you know, we don't want you to treat there because it may affect some endangered species. So, but I believe that, you know, we need to take a hard look at this and take a hard look at what, you know, how this is going to affect the lake. So it's not about just, you know, Newton Pond is like a separate thing. Newton Pond, in my opinion, is part of this, and it's gotta, you know, this isn't like a little trickle coming in. It's a significant area of stuff. It's as much water as probably as we're pouring. I don't know if it's as much. But this is coming from another pond too. It's coming from Sewell Pond in Boylston. So, I mean, I don't know where that's my concern with this is I don't know where to stop the chain. And so what I'd like to do is see if we can identify, you know, at least map the pond, see what's in there, and try to determine to the best we can where this may be coming from. And, you know, one thing that we talked about when we were together too is that these processes take a long time. This could be a long process to get this thing going, and, you know, so I understand, I'm asking for a lot of patience on this, and you guys have been dealing with this for 20 years, I guess, but this, you know, this is the first time it's come up in front of this board. I understand you've dealt with other boards, but, you know, I want you to know I'd like to, you know, at least find out how we can manage this in the best possible way for everybody.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
There's no question that what goes on in that pond, we care about at this lake. And because we have jurisdiction over this lake, we naturally do care about what goes on. Who is in charge of a body of water that's not something we're in charge of? Is the town, the Shrewsbury Concon, or is it just the town DPW? The reason I ask that question is because whoever it is, I believe that we as a commission should say, we are concerned about this and send our concerns to whoever is in charge of that water and say, look, we need to have you take a look at this because this affects our great pond. But I don't know who that would be, but it may be maybe with not just the citizens trying to do it, but if our commission puts a request for someone to take a look at this and say, look, this is affecting the Great Pond, you need to do something about it, that might give a little more force to someone helping them. I would lean more towards something like that, we might be able to do immediately, or sometime within between now and the next meeting. Find out who it might be that we address our concerns about what's going on at that pond because of the effect it's having on the Great Pond.
And that's it's an excellent suggestion, I think, but I believe we need to have a collaborative role with that. Like Worcester Lakes and Ponds, yes.
Oh, I was just going to mention that before any action could take place, that weed survey is going to have to be done, the bathymetry is going to have to be done.
You bet.
And so even regardless of who takes that on, those are the first steps in identifying those and deciding if, whoever is really gonna push this forward is gonna take those on because there's a small cost to that as well.
Yeah, understood. So, that's right, we're gonna have to figure out what's in there and
Who's responsible for it?
so,
I think it's beyond challenge. I think that's way beyond the scope of what this commission is created for. I think Green Pond is you should form an association and try and do certain things on it and bring it forward to an appropriate board within the town, not the Lake Quinsigamond Commission.
May I speak? I have something I might provide you with some additional information.
okay. Please stand up, identify.
My name is, just had me surgery. My name is David Gerber, 44 Sewell Drive in Shrewsbury. I agree with what my neighbor, Ms. Dawson, said about the dam, but we had a abutter a few years ago that experimented on his own with doing a drawdown. I don't know if anybody.
Yes, I know
about that.
Yeah,
He's no longer an abutter. But when it was done, because the dam has a sluice of some sort, there are these 1 foot high boards that you can remove. So every board you take out, you draw down a foot.
It's weird.
So it's pretty easy to do.
yeah,
So as far as the cost, I don't see a cost there other than permitting. But also, you asked who's in charge. The only people that have ever come out there was the DPW to put the dam back in, or the boards back in, so.
yeah, which would, I'm assuming you're probably directed by, conservation controls the dam, I guess.
DPW does all the work.
All the work, okay.
And there was an issue with there's a lot of, when that dam was built, it was constructed to a certain elevation. They had to change the elevation, because when dam safety built it, they built it lower, so the dam didn't fill in, so there was a lot of stuff that happened with
Yep,
it.
I remember.
So, I mean, and it's controlled by the town. The dam is controlled by the DPW, so now it would be the DPW, someplace within the DPW.
Okay, so what I'm going to put forward right now, okay, maybe someone can figure this out in the way of a motion, is that we work, we reach out in collaboration with the town. I'm gonna go back to the fact that I think this is responsibility of the Lake Quinsigamond Commission because one of the obvious proximity to it, but two, it's definitely part of the watershed. It's written in the charter. The charter is that there's Lake Quinsigamond in the watershed, so it's defined. I'm not really psyched about taking on something more, but I'm also going to say that if it's almost the same pocket because
It's not, Peter, now you're dealing with, not only Shrewsbury, now you're into Boylston, where does it end? I mean.
Well, no,
it's not- I mean, you're getting
that's a big concern of mine.
Out and out and out, I mean, you could investigate the whole state. I mean, you're expanding.
That's next month.
You're expanding and expanding and expanding. I mean, there's only so much that this board can do.
Right, but again, we're fighting a large infestation of invasives that this is contributing to directly. So I'm like, you pour chemicals in, it just keeps coming in. Like it's never gonna, that's one of the reasons we want to do source testing, to see what's coming in, why it's coming, where it's coming from, so we can deal with it. And I don't know what the results of the source testing ultimately will be, or what we'll have to do with this, but we need to identify it. And this is, my thing is that if we're charged with taking care of Lake Quinsigamond, this is basically, a disease we got going on in one arm. So that's, I'm just trying to bring it out at least far enough that we, well, not even far enough, this is, like I said, this is a pond that has milfoil in it, it's coming into Lake Quinsigamond, so, and it's part of the watershed.
So are you gonna go do Old Mill Pond next, are you gonna go do Jordan Pond next? I mean,
No,
well,
well, I hope not.
those all come into the lake,
They
you
do.
can look at those.
They do.
So, I mean, where's it start? I mean, you
Well,
got those.
if we're treating the lake and managing the lake, and, we're doing this, it's like, you have a house, and, you just keep mopping up the water, and don't fix the roof. So, that's kind of what I see this as. I mean, this is a hole in the fence over there, and so, I mean, if is there milfoil in Jordan Pond? No one knows, right? So, I don't know what we do if we found it in there. My inclination would be to deal with it, because we're gonna end up dealing with it in one way or the other. The other thing is, that when I said it's almost the same pocket, is that, we get our funding from, a bulk of our funding from the town of Shrewsbury. So, that money is gonna go, if they have to go through and do all these others, duplicate the stuff we're already doing, in another pond, those funding resources are gonna have to come from somewhere, and I'm suspecting they may come from us. So that's another one of my, concerns, that if we collaborate with the town and work with the town to get this done, it may be beneficial for the town too. So, and I know that the town manager would be interested in working it like that. So,
I recommend that you go ahead and talk to the town manager about this, and maybe the town would be perfectly happy to go ahead and address this. I'm not sure it's been really brought before anybody. Just the first I've heard that pond is introducing an invasive species to
that was the first
our
I
lake.
heard of it, so.
So as a result, I mean, it's been my experience that the government of Shrewsbury has been pretty responsive to the people once they know there's a problem. I just thought we could lend a hand, but as a commission, saying, this is a concern, we wish you'd take a look at it. And that maybe that would cause some.
That conversation's already gone on, Roger.
Yeah, I know.
So the manager's basically saying, he's waiting for us to see if it's something we can help with.
Oh.
So that's kind of where we're at there. He's not demanding help, he's not.
I understand.
He's not hanging any hammer over our head, but that was something that, we had to figure out. Does it make more sense for us to incorporate things into our stuff? And maybe it's an opportunity to get increased funding, I don't know, but, will it be less money if we include it in, ultimately for the community, if we include it in with the stuff we're already doing? So.
My only comment in this was, I sort of see this as two separate problems. It's clear that every source that provides water to Lake Quinsigamond, we should understand, and I think we all agree, so that we have a good idea of what's going to happen in the future with regards to the water quality in the lake. What I see as a second problem is we have very limited resources, and it's a second question, very hard one, to find where would be the best points to apply those limited resources. But that second problem can't be addressed until the first one is, do we know what's going on?
All right. So, a motion to, I guess,
There's a
I guess,
question over here.
oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
May I ask a question as well as enter into evidence of what the pond looks like?
Okay,
My name is Dr. Tatiana Hamawi. I'm probably one of the youngest, newest, not youngest, but newest owners on the lake in Lake Quinsigamond, in Newton Pond. And just to give you evidence of what it looks like, when you go out on a kayak on that lake and you look down in the water, you are looking at a forest. It is frightening enough that if a small child were to fall in that water, they would probably get twisted in all of that, and it's very dangerous in my opinion. And that is everywhere on every corner of this pond. And you can almost not catch any fish. I don't know how the fish are managing in there. There is no space for anything else. So you might not see a whole lot on the top when you go by and drive by it, but I urge someone to go down, get on a kayak, and just look. And you are looking at a forest. You can see nothing but the milfoil. The second question, or the question I have is, if you do determine that our pond is part of your purview, is there a possibility that one of us could join the board and have a voice on the commission? I mean, I love that you are hearing us and that you are willing to work and discuss this and help us, because we seem to have no voice elsewhere. With your direction, we could either work with you, have a member on your board, or have some instruction on how to do it ourselves, or direction, but we definitely need your experience and your guidance, and thank you for it.
all right, thank you. I did take a tour. They were, some of the abutters were kind enough to take me out on the boat and look at the stuff. It looks a lot like the front of my house. This problem isn't, what you have there is that you have a healthy.
Oh, you're on the lake, okay.
Yeah, you have a healthy infestation.
Yeah.
For sure, okay? It's not the worst thing I've seen, not the worst thing I've seen in Lake Quinsigamond, certainly. So, and we have all the same concerns about, wildlife in there, and, invasives will grow in exclusion of anything else, so, none of the native or indigenous plants are gonna survive against that. So, we understand the danger of it, and it's, it's not fun to swim around in, although it doesn't really bother me, I do it anyway, but, that said, you can get on the Lake Quinsigamond Commission, because the way the board is made up, these seats, become open from time to time, and you can apply for them. To expand the commission, we're a state agency, we're not a town agency. To do that, and we're written in legislation, in the similar, I think it's the same chapter as DEP. But we're in legislation, so in order to change anything like the number of people on the board and how we do it, we'd have to change the charter. So that's a whole legislative process. We'd have to go to the legislature and do that. We've done it. It takes a long time.
Is it a voted position or a?
No, it's appointed. So you could, put your hat in the ring with the town manager, or you could join Concom. It would be really helpful if you moved to Worcester, because they have an open seat. You want to move like a fill it, or Grafton. No, we want to. And join the Grafton Concom. So.
What is Concom?
What's that?
Conservation Commission.
Conservation Commission. So, yeah, but it is important. So just so you understand, this problem is important. We recognize that. We're just trying to figure out how the best to deal with it. And Mr. Polito is right on. We have limited resources, and we have limited time to do stuff. We're all volunteers, and it's just an enormous task. With the safety, our purview really is the water quality and environmental stuff and the safety of the lake. That's our two big things, and it's a daunting task. And I spend a lot of time fundraising at the town level, trying to go to towns and ask them for appropriations. Shrewsbury's been very generous with us, and so when the manager kind of puts it out there, I want to take it seriously and do the best I can to accommodate, because they're generous to us. So, but that's kind of where we are with the thing. So we're just trying to figure that out and make sure that we do the right thing. But Mr. Nelson's right. we gotta figure out what's in there and make sure, so that's gonna cost, that's gonna be a cost associated with that. So I guess like that, to me, right now, that's where it's boiled down to, is that, do we wanna do that and see what's going on over there and see how bad it is and what kind of a threat it is to us? And, take it from there. But, yes, Mr. Aaron.
If I can just add a couple comments to this discussion. As I've been a part of what's called the Lake Quinsigamond Watershed Association and the Lake Quinsigamond Commission, at this point in time, probably for decades. With that said, by you being here tonight, that's part of the process, but I gotta tell you, it goes beyond that. And I can just quickly blurt out a bunch of things. Should you organize as the Newton Lake Watershed Association? Maybe. Do you need to have a bake sale? And I'm being but I'm not jesting. Raffle off a boat, whatever. We get dock fees, which we use those monies towards weed treatment. Could you find some way to cobble some money together to treat the weeds? Would you then, if you got that ambitious, need to go to the town of Shrewsbury DPW and Concom and say, this is what we want to do. We also want to lower the lake by Newton Pond by pulling up some sluice boards at the end of the year, like when we lower Lake Quinsigamond. These are all things of a plan that I suggest that you get your butters together to propose and then say bring to the town DPW, the town Concom, and like I said, cobble together a few bucks so that maybe you can, get approval to so then treat the milfoil and, take some action as a butters yourself, as I've seen and had to see my and other people's initiatives. So fight, and fight for recognition, monies over the course of decades. I mean, we're finally getting a little help from various towns where, we were basically ignored for decades in terms of anybody giving us any fiscal help towards some of the ends that we've achieved. So, thank you, Mr. Chair, I want to say that. All right.
Thank you. Any questions? Any more comments, questions, suggestions? I don't know, are you ready to vote on any kind of motion to move forward, at least find out, at least let's test and see what's in there?
We're still lacking enough information about the particular jurisdiction of the pond. I think we need to do some investigative research on that, and then take a vote in another meeting.
So, what your question is whether, what our jurisdiction is as a
Right.
commission? Okay.
History of the dams, history of the pond, history of the
Well,
butters.
that's a different, I understand all that stuff is important, but our jurisdictions are jurisdictions, so that's defined.
But some of that history includes some of the jurisdiction.
Well, the latest jurisdiction was, what was our latest? It was rewritten like 2 years ago. So that's where it's sitting now. Which is, the watershed, Lake Quinsigamond and the watershed, not the Watershed Association, by the way, that's a body, not a body of a lake, but it's the watershed, so our purpose has always been the watershed. Because I think when people came up with this idea to have someone, form a commission, the reason we're a commission as we are is because we're Worcester, Shrewsbury, and Grafton. If the lake were all in Shrewsbury, we wouldn't be having this conversation because we'd just be part of Shrewsbury. Like Newton Pond is basically all in Shrewsbury except for the little part in Boylston. So that's the one thing. So the reason they formed this commission was that they wanted a commission of all the stakeholders. So that's why they did that. And they brought in law enforcement because our original charter was just safety. It was like last Sunday, all the time down there, and people were literally getting killed, and no one was policing it. They didn't have police boats. The police force was entirely, the makeup of both the city and the town was entirely different. Originally, Grafton wasn't involved in it until it became clear that in order to do the stuff we need to do to manage the lake and environmental side, had to include Grafton because Grafton was part of the water body. So,
and that makes sense. I think
Yeah.
that, if you're gonna look at best bang for the buck on your lake management plan, if you look at the upstream sources more than the downstream impacts
Yeah.
for your weed treatment program, you're probably gonna get a better outcome.
yeah, that's what we think. And unfortunately, we're really interested in the upstream sources, and, you know, but the downstream consequences affect what we can actually treat. That's where the evacii comes in, because they're considering, you know, if you treat north of the evacii and the lake flows south, you're gonna affect the evacii. This is why we're confined today to treat on the south end of Route 20, south side of Route 20. But having this particular area going on, that may change things for us, because it's a blatant thing to the north, and it's coming in. So I don't even know if it's, I mean, I'm assuming it's coming in, so I guess I don't know if it's coming in or not, but I can't see how it wouldn't. And you know, we will reach out. So what I'd like to do, so.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a comment?
Yep.
What was said? Yes, scientifically, it's obvious what you do upstream has the strongest effect on the lake. But as the previous conversation about there are 3 towns involved, Worcester, Shrewsbury, and Grafton. Grafton is very concerned, obviously, at Flint Pond, which is in Grafton, but even more so the Quinsigamond River, which flows down through Lake Ripple and further ponds in Grafton. So everything that happens here ends up going into Grafton. So that's Grafton's main concern.
Can we maybe involve the Blackstone Watershed Coalition or the Blackstone Watershed Association?
Yes, I think that's a move that we'll probably be dealing with. I mean, right now, like we have this collaborative thing going on with Lakes and Ponds and the Watershed Association. And there's been talk about farming some of the work we're doing with that out to Blackstone, because Blackstone is a much more robust organization than any of the 3 boards that we're talking about here. Or it doesn't have some of the confines that we have, because there's some, you know, some things that we can and can't do. So, like, you know, the Lake Quinsigamond Commission cannot hold a fundraiser. You know, a car wash, or you can't do stuff like that. But, you know, just the Watershed Association can. We're not a 501c3 or anything like that, we're a state entity. So, anyway, that's, does that answer your question? So what I'm gonna, my response to you folks at Newton Pond, and I really appreciate you coming in. This is a good thing. You know, I suggested this before. I suggested that it may be a good idea to get involved with the Lake Quinsigamond Watershed Association, that what I'd like to do is go back and kind of get more ducks in a row and talk to some more people, including the folks from Boylston. I want to get their input, and you know, on conservation and they have selectmen, right? Is that what the government is over there? So, and a town administrator. So, and see what, in conservation over there, and see what, kind of take their temperature and see what they think.
They're looking forward to hearing from you. I talked to my buddy, he's on the Conservation
Okay.
Commission.
Yep. Okay, that's your,
Yeah,
So,
he said, yep, just tell him to come up.
all right,
I forget the girl's name to contact,
all
but,
right, we'll reach out, if you can.
yep, they're all,
if you
they're
can-
totally
and
welcome.
We'll reach out and kind of take a study, and we'll come back and we'll discuss it again. Is that fair to everyone? We'll see if it makes sense.
Well, I gotta reiterate this point, because I feel very strongly about it. I'm looking at you folks in Newton Pond. I appreciate and empathize with you that you wanna enjoy the pond, and don't wanna see the pleasure taken away by having invasive milfoil right to the surface of the water. I hear you, I understand that. I also hear the one thing that's been concretely said is, and I agree, I'm not gonna argue with it, that, yeah, the seedlings from that's gonna come down into the lake and just affect the lake, yeah. I have no argument with that. My concern, though, is like what we've done. Get organized, identify what you have for weeds. Can you treat it? It's not against any law. How much would it cost to treat it? There's a lot of things. Talk to the appropriate DPW, Town of Boylston, Shrewsbury, Concoms, in terms of this is what we've identified as the problem. This is what we think might be a solution. This is how much it might cost. And again, you may have to pony in some money yourselves, like for instance, we have dock permits. And get yourself organized and be thinking like that, so that when you come back to a group like us, or when you go back to the DPW of Shrewsbury or the Concom, you come forward with some reasoned proposal and solutions for your problem, okay? That's it. I'm gonna be concrete to the point.
Okay, so, thank you.
We have the same problem in Newton Pond that you have in the lake. It runs in from Boylston, from other, from Sewell Pond, et cetera. So whatever solution.
Sir, we need to, I hate to be a stickler, but
Yeah.
we're on TV and
Exactly.
it's a,
Who are you, sir?
so.
Jerry McQueenie, I live on Sewell Street. across from-
That's all we need, is identify your name and address and all that stuff. So to kind of put this, I understand what you guys have. I mean, obviously, you're fairly organized because this is the biggest group of people from one entity of any of the water bodies on Lake Quinsigamond that I've seen in this room in a long time. So I don't say I think you're already taking some of the steps that Mr. Pike is talking about, and he's right, those are the things you need to do. So I think you guys are on the right path and doing the right thing, and I know this isn't an effort that's just coming up today. I know you talked to commissions in the past. I don't want to repeat that part of the history. I want it able to move forward. We talked about this in our tour, that if, probably what would happen if this were to move forward, that Newton Pond would be under the same rules as Lake Quinsigamond as far as registering your docks and whatnot. So that would, you'd probably have to do that. So, most of that, one is so we can make sure that, things are consistent and that we don't have any complaints about anybody else saying that, why are we doing, why are we taking care of this and they're not contributing? So that would be the big point right there. So we just follow our rules, our speed limits, everything. So we can give you a copy of those, you can mull them over, because you may not want to do that. Anyway, that's a ways down the road. Let's go, we'll basically table this till next month, and we'll go through and we'll be in contact. I don't know who the spokespeople, I guess, are, how we talked before, and we'll move forward.
You can get in touch with me if you want.
All right.
My name is Bob Heller.
Perfect.
I live at 116 Sewell Street. And I appreciate what you're saying about getting everything all in a row. Yeah. But I've only been there for 4 years, but in talking to the neighbors, these folks have tried for the last 20 years to get something accomplished. And they've gotten shot down every single time. It's very frustrating.
Right.
I've only been there for 4 years, and the amount of weeds that have increased in just that 4-year period is pretty incredible.
Right.
It's a bad situation.
Right. And again, I feel for you, because I got the same thing going on in front of my house, literally.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
and you guys can come over and see it.
Whatever you guys can do, and it seems like we're already under your purview. Like you said, we're part of the watershed. This law was just...
Right. So let's get this thing buttoned up and see if we can, see how we can move it. I will say this, that, whatever happens at the end of the day, any cooperation that we can give, we'll do it.
Thank you.
Within our ability to do it. That's what I can, commit to. All right?
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Update on the lake management plan.
So anyone who abuts the lake, I'd like to make the list, if you could step outside and I will get everybody's names.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Jess, we got is the contract signed?
It's in the town manager's office.
It's in the manager's office?
So, yeah, so within the next day or two.
Okay. So we got it back, we picked the winner?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, but we haven't signed it, so there's no schedule of
Not yet.
when they're gonna go in there? Okay, so that's the next step, the contract was awarded, and, as soon as we get an update on when that's going to happen, we'll get it out. Next year, I'd like to do is, in fact, to be frank, I think right after we treat this year, I'm gonna start the process, if that's possible, for next year, because I'd like to do this like early June. I'd like to have those guys in the water with a little airboat doing their thing. On the good side of that, from the lake management program, I was out today with, taking a little tour of the lake, taking pictures of dock plates on Flint Pond. And yeah, there's probably 30 of them that aren't registered over there. So we gotta work on that. But that said, I went by the Sacred Lotus. It is probably a 10th of the crop that we had last year. because we treated it.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, so, and I wasn't expecting results like that, to be frank, because it's seed spread, and, you know, once it flowers, the seeds get to the bottom, and they, who knows, I mean, they could be there for a long time. Jacqueline or Barbara could probably talk better than I could about it, but that's good to see. It's good to see that actually took effect. It's getting out there. Certainly the homeowner, because it really choked this rock in this whole swimming area. Now we actually said the other day, because I don't mind that one over there, because they're beautiful flowers. That looks good. I go, well, if I thought I could do that there and it wouldn't do anything, like multiply, you know. But so in a week, they'll probably be done, so enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They do the testing
I agree.
of that special weed, what's it called, ACI?
That, yeah, no, the Eurasian, the ACI, so, no. Any other questions on, that's really all I have. So, yeah, update from Jacqueline. Sorry to keep hanging out so long.
No problem. All right. So I have some reports from the last session that I had sampled, as well as some other information on the lake. I was out twice in July on the 10th and the 27th, collecting water samples. What we found was that the surface temperature is about 26.1 degrees Celsius. This is about 79 degrees, so it is getting quite warm on the surface. The transparency, though, which is the how far down you can see, pretty indicative of water quality. It's pretty high. It's 15 feet. It means you could see down 15 feet before it starts getting murky, and pretty high light penetration, which is means there's not a lot of suspended particles in the water, but also means a lot of light could get down to the plants. So, you know, pluses and negatives, but it's not a bad thing. The dissolved oxygen, or DO, is 7.36 milligrams per liter. This is quite high. It's healthy for most fish species. And then total phosphorus, this is one of the things that DEP is looking at in Lake Quinsigamond. All of the samples that I took on the 10th showed less than 0.010 milligrams per liter, so these are below detection limits levels of phosphorus. So that's very good news. So it's also contributing to the high clarity in the water. On the right-hand side, you'll see the graph for July of the oxygen and temperature profile of the lake. This was taken on the 23rd. We see that the temperature, the thermocline, or when the rapid drop in temperature takes place, oh yes, there are some more copies there if you would like to see. The rapid drop in temperature starts taking place around 8 to 12 feet, which is resulting in a drop of oxygen around 24 feet. Once you hit about 4.5, 5 milligrams per liter, that axis on the top is for the dissolved oxygen, milligrams per liter. That's when you start seeing an environment that's a lot harder for fish to survive in. So this is, again, something that, 24 feet is still quite deep for fish, so we're just keeping an eye on this and making sure that, it doesn't get too shallow. We have seen this oxygen depletion move up the column throughout the season as the temperature warms up and the thermocline gets more shallow. What a lot of people are probably most interested in is that second graph, and I'm sorry that I don't have enough for everyone here, but I could leave these here as well. But I have a chart here that maps the Enterococcus numbers. This is the bacteria that DCR tracks at the beaches and are what is used to determine if there is a beach closure. As we know, in the last 2 years, we've had an uptick in the number of closures to the point where several of the beaches were closed, or the beaches were closed for more than 50% of the season last year. Up to the 6th or the 23rd, we had no beach closures this year, and then on the 23rd at Regatta Point, we did get an increased increased number for enterococci for Regatta Point, which led to a single-day closure. They came back and tested a day later and found that the number went down. So the advisory threshold is 61, most probable number. That's the unit they use to measure the colonies in the Petri dish. We had 117, but then it went down to 44 on the next sample date. So this is something that is not uncommon after a heavy rain event. There were some very rainy events during this month, and so it's not necessarily indicative of a larger problem. We're of course keyed into it because we have a history of these high levels here, but up to this point, Regatta Point and Lake Park have had really stellar numbers as far as the bacteria that are being tested by DCR. So that's really great news. I also have here some pictures from the monitoring collaborative. Several volunteers from the Lake Association brought in samples on our last Saturday monitoring event at the Blackstone Visitor Center. We did find one sample that had Dolichospermum, or also known as Anabaena, which is a type of cyanobacteria. However, it was just one water sample, and it didn't seem to be present throughout all of the samples. So, yeah. Any questions?
Just one technical question.
Yeah.
Could you give a rough idea of the error bars on the graphs on the right, two graphs on the right?
The error bars on the graphs on the graph with the oxygen and the temperature.
Yes.
So those are just point readings that I take. So the scale that I use is I measure 1 foot below the surface and then every 4 feet down, and so those are just individual points that are measured. And
But no rough idea of how accurate the instrument is?
Right, it's plus or I don't have it offhand. It's pretty accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you, Jacqueline, I don't know if you can answer this question. In terms of the 723 testing at Regatta Point with the number being 117, do you have any supposition clinically, scientifically, as to why that number was so high there? Other than, was there a recent rain event around that day, and if so, where might you think the source of that high Enterococcus bacteria came from?
So in Worcester, we have had incidences where geese were responsible for a hit, if there are a lot of geese in the water. We also have incidences after rain events. I don't know exactly when the rain was around the 23rd, but I know that there have been a lot of rain events in that part of the month. It would probably be coming in through a storm drain. So one thing is that we don't know exactly what is caused. The
storm drains that I'm aware of relative to Regatta Point are the north end coming out a culvert. There may be a drain from the UMass Medical Center parking lot, but besides that, I believe I think it's mitigated. There's a storm drain still near the new Route 9 bridge on the north Worcester side, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. There is. The Belmont Street drain you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yep, there is one there. And it is possible.
I thought it was mitigated though, doesn't it go into like a settling pond?
It does, and it usually is funneled down to the southern portion. It's hard to know if that's what's affecting the beach to the north of that. So as far as what's causing the spike, again, we don't necessarily know for sure with this test if it was from waterfowl or if it was human source or if it was a dog, for example. One thing that we have ready now is after the closures that we had last year, which were ongoing and quite mysterious, to be frank, is that we have set up through the city a purchase order so that if we do have a string of closures and we know that it's going to continue to have high numbers, we're able to take a sample and then get a biomarker, a DNA biomarker test that would determine the source of that bacteria, if it is human source or if it is waterfowl or some other thing. Because the management of bacteria depends on where the source is coming from.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, any other questions? In layman's terms, dumb it down for us commissioner types, the lake seems pretty healthy.
Things are looking good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that we're doing this summer is we're taking a couple samples in the middle of the lake for just a wide variety of different toxicants, including PCBs, heavy metals, different semi-volatile and volatile compounds, PFAS and PFOA, which are big in the news right now, just to see what we're going to find. If we get any hits, then we could further investigate, but we're kind of doing that sweeping water quality sample to see what we can find. So we did our first round of that this month as well, and we're going to do a wet weather and a dry weather set. And so what will happen there is once we get the results, we'll take a really close look at what we see, if we see anything, and then have a separate report in addition to the water quality monitoring report that we do every year for Lake Quinsigamond.
Question on that, are those surface samples or depth samples?
They're taken just below the surface. Yep. Yeah, I think the Lakes and Ponds program is really looking at, the water that humans will be having contact with. Yeah.
Yes, the deeper you go, the more its history.
For sure. Yeah. Although the lake does also turn.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy with the report that we got from Jacqueline. It's getting better every year.
Thank you.
Of course. And if you have any questions further down, feel free to email. Here's another one here for anyone who wants it.
Thanks much.
Thank you.
Okay, so, an update from the watershed. Ms. Kicker.
Hello, Barbara Kickham, Lake Quinsigamond Watershed Association. I just wanted to add on to what Jacqueline was talking about. We have hired an intern. Haven't been here for the last couple months, so I don't know what updates you've had on that. But we have a Clark University graduate student that we're paying to go out and collect some bacteria samples. So initially our goal was to look at why we're seeing so many beach closures, sampling for enterococci at the 2 state parks. We were going to partner with DCR and do a partnership grant, but we decided we could do it cheaper and do it more efficiently. To partner with them, you have to just basically write them a check. So we're going to think of another project to work with them on. So this one, our student has gone out 3 times. Last week he couldn't make it out. He went out this week, so we'll have 4 samples. The City of Worcester is doing the analysis at their public water supply treatment plant over in Holden. And so we don't have to pay for that. We're just paying for the time for our student. I think he came to a commission meeting, Tucker Collins, a couple months ago. Okay, and
Tucker Collins.
sorry, yeah, he's married to Tucker Beckett. So what we're seeing so far, we're sampling at the 2 state beaches, and we're sampling at Billings Brook, which is the Eaglehead condos, and at Tilly Brook or Kings Brook at the former Buca de Beppo. That's all the samples and at the Belmont Street outfall under the Route 9 bridge just after the vortex separator. So we have 5 locations. We have to do a duplicate and a blank, and that's all that the city's lab could handle from us this year. Maybe we'll pay for another lab to do more next year. So far the results look very good. They've all, have been generally meeting standards. So our sample for bacteria is a different type of bacteria strain. We're doing E. coli, which is what the state is is moving towards for freshwater bodies. Right now, the standards, you can use enterococci, but we wanted to compare because we didn't understand why the beaches were closing so much. So it seems to be a combination of factors. As Jacqueline was saying, we're not seeing any high bacteria levels at the beaches this year, except for that one sample. And it seems that there's a couple of things going on. One is the gypsy moths. They were very prolific last year. There was just a lot of waste from the gypsy moths. They don't have bacteria, they don't have guts like humans or warm-blooded animals. So it didn't really make sense that that might be, but that was a big factor because it was enormous. But the other factor is what we've heard from staff at Regatta Point, from Lucas and Casey, is that the geese have moved. They were hanging around on the beach because they were doing work over near the boathouse, near the Route 9 bridge. So the geese have moved over there and moved away from the beaches. And we also have a watershed association active member who lives right across from Regatta Point, and he was reporting how the geese were always landing on the beach after everyone left for the day. That's not really happening. So there is these two things that might somehow be playing into it. We don't really know. But the one troubling piece of data that we're getting is we are seeing bacteria at the Belmont Street outfall. It's not hugely alarming. It's within as DEP would put it, a medium priority for bacteria source. It's in the thousands range, like 5,000 to 8,000 milligrams per liter for E. coli, or what is it? Colony forming units, sorry. So there is some bacteria coming into the lake at the Route 9 bridge. It drains a huge area. Considering the large area that it's draining, it's not super high, but it brings some question, and we may want to investigate, we may want the city to investigate depending how high the concentrations get. Right now, like I said, it's a big concern would be if they were over 10,000, they would be, it would be more of a concern. They're below that, and also where we sample is right at where it flows from the vortex separator into the cove at Ramshorn Island, and it will dissipate pretty quickly with the sun and with the heat. So it doesn't, by the time it's where anybody is going to touch it, it's going to be destroyed. So we're collecting at kind of the worst location. But I just wanted to bring that to you. So those are just the July results. We're going to sample through September, and we'll have more of a report on that, this winter, like October, and we'll report the data to DEP. So any questions on that?
You guys got the QAP approved?
Yes.
As well, right?
Yeah, our quality assurance project plan. Yeah.
So DEP will take the data and
Yeah.
will accept the data?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Great job. I
Yeah.
think it's exciting that this is going on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about swans.
That they could be causing bacteria? Yeah.
No, I was told that that's how they got rid of the geese at Elm Park. That they are natural enemies.
Oh,
and
yeah,
the geese really do not like swans.
No.
And the swans aren't a big environmental problem. But I didn't know how natural swans were to a place like Quinsigamond.
Well, we got 14 of them on the lake.
Do we have some?
Yeah, there's about 14 of
And I
them.
bet there's no geese over there either, is there?
No,
They're all over the lake though, they
Yeah.
travel in pairs.
Yeah, no, there's like I said, there's no geese that invade the swan space.
Yeah.
There's a number of small ponds down the Cape that have a pair of swans on them, and the geese clearly leave every time they
Yeah.
land.
Just a thought.
No, it's good.
Get some more
Swans, my
swans.
observation of things, they're not as, how can I put this, integrated with humans as the geese are. That is, they tend to stay below Sunset Beach, but during the fall, in the winter months, I've seen the swans all the way up to the 290 bridge. But I have to say this, I may not be popular for saying it, but at a certain point, there are so many Canada geese that seem to be proliferating on the lake, that something someday may need to be done to cut down on their numbers. I'm not suggesting that the watershed, the commission go buy a bunch of swan eggs and try to propagate swans up and down the lake, but maybe there's gonna have to be some kind of, call it what you want, hunt, harvesting, or whatever, because the reality of the matter is, I think Canada geese individually create 2.5 pounds of, figure it out, per day. And there's a lot of geese doing a lot of defecating in the water, and at some point, we need to maybe take the matter, the bull by the horns or the goose by the neck, and, okay? So, again, it may not be too popular for this, but do we really need to have the lake be infected with bacteria where people can't even enjoy it because there's so many geese? It's a question I put out there, and I'm not looking for any discussion at this point. Further, Mr. Chairman, I'm just stating it. Thank you very much.
Well, I just wanted to add, Mr. Pica, that where we saw the high bacteria levels were at the Belmont Street outfall, which drains Belmont Hill. So there's numerous sources. I don't think that's geese, that's humans and whatever, but.
Yeah, there are a lot of humans.
Yeah, so.
Or dogs.
Yeah, dogs, so there's that. One more thing, the Celebrate Lake Quinsig Day is September 7th, Saturday, the weekend after Labor Day, and we're gonna have the classic wooden boats again from 9 to 12. The boat parade is gonna be at noon instead of 2 this year, so noon, and the theme is Disney. If anybody wants to win big prizes. We're gonna have yoga on the beach with Lake-like yoga at 11, if anyone's interested. And we're gonna have a DJ at open mic, beer, wine, and soda. Bring a picnic. We're not having food this year. And
That's
from noon, basically from noon to 4. And what else am I forgetting? Thank you to our sponsors, Shoreside Dock, Ski Chair, USA Marine, Doug Russell, and Full Throttle are supporting us this year, so thank you to them. It's Saturday, yep. So, might want to see if we can get the mounted police to come again, that was fun.
I put them in.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if they're gonna.
I know it's late
accepted the
this year.
assignment.
It's-
I am their commanding officer, so I suspect that they'll be going.
Okay.
So, we'll make, you need a poop bag.
Yeah.
No, that's just hay and water.
Okay? I don't wanna get a spike the next day. All right,
Which is grass and water.
Next meeting.
that's, so
Our next meeting?
the watershed's next meeting?
Yeah, next meeting, we are meeting the 3rd Wednesday of every month, so I'm not sure what the date is of August, whatever the 3rd Wednesday is.
21st? I'm just guessing here.
And where's that again?
It's at the Marine Corps League, Lake Ave, Worcester, 7 o'clock.
21st.
21st,
Yeah.
thank you.
So, which brings us to our next meeting.
Mr.
And
Chair, I'd like to suggest that we set the next meeting on Wednesday, August 28th at 7 p.m.
Fine. Can we vote on that? Nope, we already have it on the schedule, right? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
What?
Should we have a discussion on whether we should adjourn or not? I'll second the motion if it has a second.
All right, throw that in my face. All right, so, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?